Hey guys, welcome to Tony Badger Gaming. My name is James, and today we're going to be discussing, is Tom Clancy the Division worth it? Finally, after nearly 3 years of waiting, the release for the Division is coming right round the corner, and those lucky enough have just been able to play the closed beta of the game. However, what I'm sure you're all desperate to know by now is whether it lives up to the high expectations. Now, before we start discussing whether the game is worth it or not, it's just worth stating that we're only judging the beta of the game, so this is only a fraction of what's going to be offered in the full game.
So, The Division is an open world, third person shooter, which is mainly a loot based game, similar to Destiny in some aspects, as you have to scavenge for your own weapons, armour, and equipment. The background behind the game is that on Black Friday, a massive outbreak of disease hit New York, causing society to collapse into chaos, and then the game falls into your hands, as you are humanity's last hope.
Furthermore, the Division can be played by yourself or with other players. There's a main storyline behind the game that you can play, but this isn't like your typical Call of Duty campaign, where you have very little freedom over what you want to do. Instead, you can do pretty much whatever you want to do, whenever you want, and there are loads of side missions available to do as well. In the beta, we only had a very small part of the storyline to play, but from what we got to play, it was pretty fun.
Typical missions consist of clearing through waves of enemies, protecting agents, and retrieving items. However, once I progressed through as much of the storyline as I could, there was still a lot of side missions to do. So I'm confident that the Division will be full of content and it won't be the type of game that you will get bored of within a week of purchasing. One thing that I was really impressed with in the Division is that the playing area is massive. Even though we were restricted of most of the areas that you would be able to explore in the full game, there was still a lot of space to play in, and this gives us very high hopes about how massive the map will be in the full game. One criticism that I did have of the single player, though, is that some of the side missions get pretty repetitive, as it is just the matter of killing a few guys and collecting your reward, etc. So I hope that they make these more interesting in the full game.
Now, as for the combat mechanics of the game, I was really impressed. You're able to carry 2 primary weapons and a sidearm, which definitely does make sense, as you do have to put a lot of bullets into a player to kill them, so you'll find yourself swapping between weapons to kill an enemy quite often. You can add attachments and optics on your weapon, some of which allow you to aim from a first-person perspective, which adds some nice variation to the game. Furthermore, one element that I especially liked about the combat system is the abilities feature. Abilities give you some sort of tactical advantage in the game, such as being able to heal allies within a smaller radius, or being able to pull out a ballistic shield to block bullets. We only got to see a few of these in the beta, but there will be 12 of them in the full game.
Also, there's a tab called Talents, which was completely hidden from us, but I get the impression that this will add some kind of upgrades which will give a greater diversity in combat within the game. Additionally, there's a tab called Perks, which again I suspect will give you some kind of tactical advantage, but we don't know for sure yet. Overall, the combat system is great, and I expect that all the variables such as skills, talents, and perks will add a ton of tactics to the game.
However, as for the movement mechanics of the game, Gears of War just sprung to my mind as soon as I started playing The Division. The Division is very much so a cover-based shooter, as you can look behind pretty much any object big enough. Also, you can mantle over objects, and there are a few other movement options as well. Yet despite all the variation in movement, it doesn't quite feel as smooth as I would have liked it to, as all too often I'm asking myself, why didn't it give me the option to mantle over that, etc. It just seemed a tad clunky. Look at this side-by-side comparison of the movement in The Division and Gears of War. The movement systems are very similar, but in Gears of War, it's much more fluent, as you only have to use a single button for movement, and the game seems to read where you want to go really well. Whereas in The Division, it just doesn't feel quite that way. It's not as fluent, and the combination of movements is not smooth. Also, I think the fact that you have to press several different buttons to move is partly to blame for this. By no means am I saying that the movement in The Division is horrible. It's still okay, but it's just not as good as it could have been.
Now, we're both in agreement that the Dark Zone is the best thing about the Division. The Dark Zone's a free area, just like in the campaign, but instead of there only being enemy AI, there are also up to 24 real players in there who can fight against you for loot. You can find some of the best loot in the game in the Dark Zone, but it's not easy to come out with alive. Firstly, any loot that you gather in the Dark Zone is contaminated, and to get it out, you have to call in an extraction helicopter. However, if you do this, every other player will be alerted and they'll know that you've got loot on you, so I wouldn't be surprised if you get a load of players trying to kill you.
You can play in a squad with up to 3 other players in the Dark Zone, which definitely gives you a massive advantage. Playing on your own in the Dark Zone is extremely difficult, as there are squads of players roaming around that you'll never win an encounter with. However, killing another player isn't as easy as it might seem. First of all, as I said earlier, players have large amounts of health, and therefore they take a lot of bullets to bring down, so they can easily turn on you. But to make things even harder, if you start shooting a neutral enemy player, you'll be marked as rogue. This highlights you to nearly every other player in the game, and it sets a massive bounty on your head, so other players will get a big reward for killing you. I'm not going to go into the whole business of how this works, as you can definitely find that elsewhere, but I can assure you that this adds a ton of fun to the game, and gives you a variety of ways to play. Do you just go rogue hunting, or do you be a rogue yourself? The choice is yours. In conclusion, The Division is a massive amount of fun to play, especially with friends, and it can appeal to all different types of players, as there's both a single player and multiplayer. Also, the game looks like it'll be packed with content on both the single player and multiplayer side of the game. The storyline looks like it'll be really exciting, and the combat mechanics look excellent, with talents, abilities, and perks adding even more tactics to the game. On the negative side, however, the movement is pretty clunky, and some of the missions are a bit repetitive, so if you get bored of the same thing pretty easily, The Division might not be the game for you. However, if you're happy to brush those things aside, then I'd definitely say The Division is worth it, as I can honestly say it's one of the most fun games to play with friends that I've ever played. So that just about wraps up for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. Cheers.